So it's been a little disappointing for Amon-Ra St. Brown, but apparently he's been tackled at the 1-2 games in a row. Josh Allen, you have him second. You're good to go.
Fire him up. Must start.
Okay. Obviously he's been struggling in his last 4 games. He's completing 60.5% of his passes and averaging 7.4 yards per attempt. He hasn't thrown a deep ball in 2 straight games. Why are we firing him up?
Because I still think he's Josh Allen. I still think the Lions defense is not very good. This game has a 54.5 over under, and the Bills are 9.5 point favorites. That tells you Vegas expects them to score about 30 points.
Yeah. Okay.
Are you saying that, like, where would you rank Josh Allen this week?
Probably second.
Okay.
I just giving because some people are going to ask questions. The Lions, this couldn't be a better matchup. I mean, the Lions give up the most big plays. They're just terrible defensively. Daniel Jones just threw for 340 yards on them, and you could worry a little bit about them just having so much success running the ball, but whatever. Devin Singletary, though, getting a little more run heavy in the red zone, as you guys mentioned on Sunday. It's really the last 4 games. Their red zone run percentage has been pretty damn high compared to earlier in the year. And the Lions have, for the most part, been a good matchup. They are now only 19th against running backs. They've been good in the passing game against running backs. Where do you have Devin Singletary this week?
He's right around 24. I would like him more if he was getting a higher percentage of those rush attempts, but they're getting James Cook more involved as well. I don't know that you can count on the 2 touchdowns. I think his chances of getting 1, though. He's behind Latavius Murray for me, but in that group.
Okay, he's behind Latavius Murray. Wow. Would you start? You have to make a decision on Samaje Perine. If you have to do that, Perine or Singletary?
Let's see what the practice report is for Joe Mixon.
Okay.
If Joe Mixon does not practice at all, then I would probably hold out hope for Perine. If Joe Mixon is a limited participant, then I would start Singletary.
I'm a little surprised where you have Singletary. You're the low guy. I have him 27th. Dave and Jamie have him in the 20 to 22 range. I guess I would. So you have Jamal Williams ahead of him?
I do.
Okay. Start Stephon Diggs. Start or sit. Oh, you like Gabe Davis a lot this week, right?
I do like Gabe Davis a lot this week.
I love Gabe Davis this week. This is a perfect matchup for Gabe Davis. On paper, this is exactly what you want. You're the high guy on Gabe Davis because Jamie and Dave have him as like a number 3 receiver in a week with no buys. There are obviously a lot of good receivers, but they've got him in the 25-ish range. You've got him 10th, I think, in PPR. Maybe no 18th. Sorry, 10th.
I was gonna say that, even I thought that sounded too high.
Maybe 10th in non-PPR. I'm not sure.
Yes, I would believe that.
Okay. So, all right, we'll start comparing him to other players as we go along through the show. Dawson Knox, start or sit. The Lions allow the 4th most fantasy points to tight ends.
He is a low-end starter this week. I do not believe that I have any streamers ranked ahead of him. He's not a streamer because he's rostered in more than 70% of leagues. But if you have Dawson Knox, I'm probably starting him. Tough decision between him and Tyler Higbee. I'd probably start him over Higbee in non-PPR and half PPR, Higbee in full PPR. But I'd start him over Dulcich. I'd start him over Komet. I'd start him over Njoku. I'd start him over Evan Ingram.
If I have any doubt about Matthew Stafford playing by the time I have to set my lineup on Thursday, I'm just going to start Dawson Knox over Higbee.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, by the way, I just want to say Dawson Knox has had some good matchups before, and it has not mattered at all. He's not a matchup-dependent guy. He's on a little bit of a roll here. His last 2 games have been solid. 57 yards, 70 yards in his last 2 games, but he's had great matchups against teams that struggle against tight ends, and he's been around 40 yards basically. It has not been his thing. On the other side of the ball, you're sitting Jared Goff. Jared Goff has thrown exactly 26 passes in 4 of his last 5 games. And they're 3-1 of those games. 26 passes. I don't know if I said that right. 26 passes in 4 of his last 5 games. He should throw more in this game. And he's 9th in the NFL in yards per attempt. What do you think about the passing game in general for the Lions?
I just don't think he has enough help right now. And maybe DJ Chark will get involved this week. Maybe Josh Reynolds, but comes back, but I just don't think it's just Amon-Ra St. Brown. There's no tight end help. They're not throwing it to DeAndre Swift enough for him to make an impact. I think he needs more help to be a viable fantasy starter, especially in a week where we don't have any buys.
All right, so St. Brown or Gabe Davis?
Definitely St. Brown in full PPR. Non-PPR, it's really close. I might have Gabe higher.
Okay, by the way, doing my Schneier fact checking. I don't think he's right. He was out of bounds at the 4-yard line against the Giants. He was out of bounds at the 1-yard line against the Bears. So it's only been once in the last 2 games. All right, Jamal Williams, DeAndre Swift. What are you doing here?
Jamal Williams is a low-end number 2 running back. DeAndre Swift is a mid-range flex. I do not want to bet on DeAndre Swift scoring on 10 touches. I'm more happy betting on, especially because he doesn't get the carries from the 1-yard line, unless it's like they've already had 3 for Williams and they're just trying to be nice.
I mean, so the Bills, this is really tough because the Bills were an incredible run defense until 4 weeks ago. And then Aaron Jones had a huge game, 143 yards. Michael Carter and James Robinson were good. Carter had 12 carries, 76 yards, and a touchdown. Dalvin Cook had 14 for 119 yards and a touchdown. This was 3 games in a row. Their run defense stunk. Then they come out last week and they shut down Nick Chubb, 14 carries for 19 yards. So how does all this factor in for Jamal Williams?
I've been ranking Jamal Williams around 15th. I think he's closer to 25th this week. So I don't particularly like him. He might be the one spot ahead of Devin Singletary. He's lower than he normally is. But like, you got to feel pretty good about the fact that he's going to get 15 touches. And if they get to the 1-yard line or inside the 5, you got to feel pretty good about the fact that he's getting into the end zone.
Are you starting James Conner and David Montgomery over?
Oh, yeah. Conner for sure. Montgomery is right there in that group. I actually have it Williams, Montgomery, Singletary right now.
You're starting Jeff Wilson over the running backs in this game?
Yes.
Okay. Man, I really want to like Devin Singletary more than you do. Like he's getting, he's getting about 15 carries a game now. Do you think that continues? How comfortable do you feel with Devin Singletary getting 15 carries?
I feel it's less likely than Jamal Williams getting 15 carries, but more likely than it normally is for Singletary to get 15 carries. This is like Sean McDermott has said they want to run the ball more, and Singletary has done a good job with it. You could make the argument James Cook's been slightly better. I do think that there will be a game in the future where they get things going for Josh Allen. He's probably tired of hearing about how he's not been very good the last month. So it might be a game where he gets 15 carries for 65 yards, but doesn't score, and he doesn't do much besides that.
All right, this game's pretty much over. Would you start Devin Singletary or Gabe Davis?
I would start Gabe Davis.
How about Devin Singletary or like Christian Watson or Paris Campbell, guys like that?
Singletary over Watson. I'd probably go Paris Campbell in full PPR over Singletary.
Okay. Campbell's got the Steelers. Watson is at the Eagles. Bills DST is a start. And let's go to the Patriots at the Vikings. Out of the game.
So we're not going in chronological order.
No.
Okay.
Giants-Cowboys game, I think, is the easiest one. This game's a little more new. This game's, I think, probably pretty easy too in terms of starts and sits. It's like you're starting Cousins, you're starting Cook, you're starting Jefferson and Stevenson and Hawkinson. Everyone it ends with Son.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, but Cousins is interesting.
Start the Suns, but not the Cousins.
4 tough matchups this year. Philadelphia, Washington, Buffalo, Dallas. He scored 10.8, 20.4, 17.5, and 2.2 fantasy points. All of those teams are top 8 in pressure rate. The Patriots are number 2 in the NFL in pressure rate behind only Dallas. So that means in back-to-back weeks, he is facing the 2 toughest pass rushes in football. And he did it last week basically without his left tackle, Christian Darrisaw, who left early, and this week without his left tackle, Christian Darrisaw. And it's prime time. So start or sit Kirk Cousins.
I do not want to start Kirk Cousins. I think he's QB 16 or 17. I'm probably going to move him down a spot or 2 today. This is one of the few guys who we've been starting who I would rather start a streamer over him. So if you can get away from Cousins, I think you should. It's all of the bad things about Kirk Cousins combined into one game.
Start Daniel Jones at the Cowboys or Cousins?
Daniel Jones.
No. Really?
I don't particularly like not there. I think Jones is 15th for me. So it's not like I'm excited to start Jones.
Yeah.
But
he's interesting. Yeah, well, we'll get to him, but he's 89% rostered. So people have to make a decision because last time he faced the Cowboys, they pummeled him. That's probably going to happen again, like it did to Cousins last week. Yeah, Cousins right now is something like QB 20 per game. Let me see where he is.
And I think it's important to say that's not a product of some bad luck or something. Like you look at the way we measure quarterback play, he has not been a good quarterback this season.
Except I'll just say one thing. Before last week, or 4 days ago, he was QB 10. His game was so bad against the Cowboys that it dropped him from 10 per game to 20th per game in 6-point per passing touchdown leagues. But
what's the difference right now between 10th and 20th?
Oh, that's a good question. I will look that up for you. For Cousins, low touchdown rate this year. He's been throwing the ball downfield a lot since the bye. That's the good news. Go ahead.
When he's been, especially considering he's playing a team that's second in pressure rate, and we don't expect him to have Christian Darrisaw. Like, I don't know that throwing the ball down the field is a good thing. He needs to get the ball out of his hand.
That's what I went back and I watched Justin Jefferson to see if he looked hobbled. It's hard for me to know, but I thought he looked great. Fast as hell. Definitely got open against Trayvon Diggs. Trayvon Diggs was shadowing him. But he was running long routes. His average route depth was almost 11 yards. That's very high. And by the time he was open, Kirk Cousins was getting rid of the ball, was getting sacked. So, yes, I see what you're saying, but you can't sit Justin Jefferson, can you?
You cannot even think about it.
Okay. QB 10 right now is Jimmy Garoppolo at 19.9. QB 20 is Kirk Cousins at 17.9. 2 points per game. Dalvin Cook, yes. Justin Jefferson, yes. Starter sit Adam Thielen.
I don't want to. He's in number 4 wide receiver for me this week. I get TJ Hawkinson has definitely impacted him. I'm skeptical that will continue because TJ Hawkinson targets have been almost useless. They'd be better off running the ball than throwing the ball to TJ Hawkinson. Is it with the efficiency that they're getting out of those plays? But right now they're throwing it to Hawkinson a lot more than they're throwing it to Thielen, so you can't trust Thielen.
And can you trust Hawkinson? The Patriots are 23rd against tight ends. They've given up 7 touchdowns to tight ends, but they did do a great job against TJ Hawkinson. 1 catch for 6 yards on 4 targets when he was on the Lions. Do you start Hawkinson or Dawson Knox?
I would start Hawkinson over Knox. I think Hawkinson's pretty much a must-start tight end right now in the way that Tyler Higbee was earlier this year. There's just so much volume that you can't sit him at this position.
He also dropped a touchdown last week. He's been getting some end zone looks. One of them was called back on a pass interference, but that has been a guy that Cousins has looked at. All right, sit Mac Jones. Ramondre Stevenson's top 12 in non-PPR. He's 5th for Heath in full PPR. In the last 8 games, he is the number 5 running back in full PPR per game. He's top 8. So start him. Damian Harris or DeAndre Swift?
I would rather start DeAndre Swift.
Can't start Harris, right?
No, he's right around RB 40 for me. I'd start Elijah Mitchell over him, Brian Robinson over him, Rashad White over him, Jerick McKinnon, Cordero Patterson, lots of guys.
Okay. Yeah, and the Vikings run defense has been very stellar. 3.73 yards per carry to running backs. They struggled against Pollard, but they were great against Zeke in terms of per carry. They give up the 4th most receiving yards per game to running backs, so that's why Stevenson could be great. All right, Jacoby Myers. What's the deal here? He has 5 straight games with 60 or fewer yards. Starter sit Jacoby Myers.
Borderline number 2 wide receiver. He's just behind Paris Campbell for me, but just ahead of Darius Slayton. So in that range, right around wide receiver 24 in full PPR, and really not much different in non right now.
I mean, you've got him ahead of DK Metcalf.
Oh, are we going to do the DK Metcalf thing again?
There's no chance I would start Myers.
I know.
It's the Raiders. against the Raiders.
Yeah. He's been 2 points per game better this year than DK Metcalf?
It doesn't matter.
I know.
I bet if you took away that game that he left early, it'd be the same. That's not the only measure, Heath. I can't just look at fantasy points per game.
No, I understand that. I use that as a defense mechanism when you're acting like it's crazy that someone would do something.
Well,
I understand saying because of the matchup, I prefer DK Metcalf over Jacoby Myers this week, but I don't think we should act like it's just a surprise that someone would have Jacoby Myers over DK Metcalf when Myers has been better.
I have something on my tongue, Heath. It's bothering me.
I mean, how many games has Jacoby Myers gone with 60 yards or fewer?
5 in a row.
How many has DK Metcalf gone?
I don't know.
At least 5 in a row.
With 60 or fewer yards? No way.
I'm pulling up the game log right now.
No, let's race to the game log. Wrong. He had 71 last week.
He had 60 or fewer
in 3 straight games before that.
Okay. He has been over 60 yards
4 times.
4 times.
Out of 9 healthy games.
Once in his last 5.
Once in his last 4. I'm not counting the Chargers game. He got hurt like right away. I'm not counting that game. All right. So Myers is a 20 around 25th for Heath. That's it. That's it, right? Patriots DST?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, they're a start.
Giants and Cowboys, stat of the game. In 5 games with Dak Prescott, Dalton Schultz has 4 end zone targets. That is the 10th most in the NFL in those 5 games. And no other Cowboy has more than 1. So that is his guy where it counts. In the last 5.5 seasons, the Cowboys are 10-1 against the Giants. The only loss they've had was with Andy Dalton at quarterback. They scored more than 30 points in 6 of those 11 games. This is complete ownership. So we'll start with the Giants. You're going to start Barkley. I know you said to sell high, but top 10 guy this week? Top 12?
I think he's 11th.
Okay. Start Ramondre Stevenson over him?
I would.
Travis Etienne?
I would. Ken Walker?
Ken Walker. All right. You have Daniel Jones. I think you said 15th. You're definitely the highest on him. I think he's really interesting because the days of them playing conservative, running the ball a ton, and winning are just about done. But that said, I'm really worried about the pass protection. They're going to be probably on their 3rd string right tackle. They may not have their starting center. They're beat up at left guard. And the last time they've played, they pressured him on 55.1% of his dropbacks. That is insane. So how does that factor in here for him and for Slayton?
Well, I think the last time they played, though, he had like 15 fantasy points with 0 touchdowns. He ran the ball for 79 yards because he's getting chased all over the place. And I would expect that's going to be a similar situation. I think the rushing production, you hope that he gets into the end zone once or twice. That's going to be the key as to whether he's actually a good start or not. But I think you said this back when he was facing some terrible defense early in the season. The matchups don't really matter for Daniel Jones. He's going to run the ball hopefully for 70 yards. He's going to throw it for around 200 yards. If he gets 1 touchdown, then he's fine. If he gets 2, then he has a great day.
Yeah, I don't know that he's going to throw it for 200 yards. I just think he's going to throw a lot more than what we're used to seeing. Because the Giants...
Well, he threw it 37 times against Dallas the last time they faced, and for 196 yards.
Yeah, right. That was kind of an anomaly. But the Cowboys only scored... How many points did they score in that game? 23. The Giants have been great defensively, but their last 3 games, they gave up 27 points to the Seahawks, then 16 points to the Texans, and 31 to the Lions, and he threw 44 times. I can't just sit here and forecast a blowout, but they're something like 10-point underdogs. And this is really more for Darius Slayton, I think, because you just want to see a lot of pass attempts. Now, the last 2 weeks, Trayvon Diggs has been glued to Allen Lazard and Justin Jefferson, and those guys had dreadful games. I don't think he's going to do that to Slayton, but it wouldn't be the worst idea because that's the only weapon they have. So what do you think about Slayton this week?
Number 3 wide receiver. He's behind DK Metcalf and Jacoby Myers, right around wide receiver 30. He has upside that's above that, but again, I think it's going to be a tough. He's not, even if Diggs doesn't follow him, he's going to see a lot of Diggs.
So you start Paris Campbell over him?
I would.
Christian Watson?
Watson's tough because I kind of hate Aaron Rodgers in that pass offense. I would start Watson over him, but they're very, very close.
Would you start a Chiefs wide receiver over Slayton? I mean, we may not know.
Not unless Juju comes. No, because Juju's we're not going to know. So.
Okay. Dallas is 13th against wide receivers. They've held Jamar Chase, Terry McLaurin, Lazard, Justin Jefferson to 54 or fewer yards with no touchdowns. So they can be very tough, and they do not give up big plays. I think they've given up the fewest pass plays in the NFL of 20-plus yards. Dak Prescott, I mean, he is rolling right now. 3 straight games with 24.6 or more fantasy points. He's only 10th or 11th for all 3 of you guys. Is that just because it's hard to put him ahead of some guys? Like, what's the deal with Dak?
Yeah, I think it's because that there is, and he hasn't shown it the last couple of weeks, but especially in a game like this, there's a risk that he throws 25 to 27 passes like he has in 3 of his last 4 games, but he doesn't average 10 or 11 yards per attempt and have a 10% touchdown rate. Like, with that low of pass volume, there is a significant risk for a good game for the Cowboys offense and a bad game for Dak Prescott. He's not really doing much as a rusher. He has 1 game this season with more than 16 yards rushing. 25 pass attempts plus 3 rush attempts does not generally make a starting fantasy quarterback.
So some guys you have ranked ahead of him that might surprise people would be Geno Smith, Jimmy Garoppolo, and Trevor Lawrence. Lawrence, I would be the one I'd really fight you on. Well, Garoppolo too. I think the Ravens defense is so good now.
Yeah.
And the Giants are probably without 3 of their top 4 defensive backs. So definitely 2, probably 3.
Right. It's the tough thing with Lawrence, and I may just, like, projections wise, it makes perfect sense why Lawrence would be projected ahead of Dak Prescott. He's going to throw maybe 15 more passes, and he's probably going to do more as a rusher as well. I may just make the decision to put Dak ahead of Lawrence. I'm probably going to stick with Jimmy.
Okay. Look, there's obviously no players on bye, as I mentioned. Justin Fields is probably out, but it's a good week for quarterbacks. So being
and I don't know if Dave and Jamie have done this, but I've got Fields ranked basically behind Daniel Jones, behind Dak Prescott, behind these guys right now, because unless something changes in terms of reporting or status, you can't start Fields over those guys on Thursday.
No, they have him 6th and 7th. I imagine they'll drop him, Justin Fields. Okay, which Cowboys running back do you prefer?
Tony Pollard, for sure.
Lay it out for me. How do you see it this playing out?
I see it playing out similarly to how it did last week, with Pollard and Zeke splitting carries and Pollard doing more in the passing game. Not 6 targets, maybe 2 or 3. But I think the Giants' run defense is not any good, and Pollard is been the best running back in football over the last 3 weeks. He's got 464 yards and 6 touchdowns in 3 games, and I just don't think the Cowboys are going to say, you know what, you're only going to touch the ball 8 to 10 times in this game.
You have him ahead of Aaron Jones, Jonathan Taylor, Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara.
I think I've got him 12th or 13th, and I think he's a top 12 running back for the rest of the season.
And look at this. I mean, what a week for running backs. When Dalvin Cook is 15th and Taylor is 14th, Kamara is 16th, it's looks like at least the high-end guys, there are.
Right. Well, and I think there's a little bit of reason to be concerned about some of those guys that you have behind him as well. I mean, we've talked about how much Kamara has struggled to get into the end zone this season and really struggled with everything the last 3 weeks. Jones has been a roller coaster ride. Taylor, I was really hopeful that Hines being gone would mean he was definitely the pass catching back. And when they had a 2-minute drill, it was Deion Jackson. And then Dalvin Cook's facing the Patriots.
Right. And Kamara's facing the Niners.
Yeah.
Yeah, true. Okay. How about Zeke? Would you start Antonio Gibson or Zeke?
I would start Antonio Gibson over Zeke. Zeke is in the Isaiah Pacheco high-end number 3 wide running back range. Miles Sanders, Deontay Foreman, Isaiah Pacheco, Ezekiel Elliott.
Oh, I feel kind of good about Zeke. You got him 31st, Jamie 24th, Dave 34th. He was good against the Giants the first game. They do have a terrible run defense. I'm not sure why, but they do. And it's Thanksgiving. It's a spotlight game. He's had a great history on Thanksgiving, but not the last 2 games. But I just think Jerry Jones probably on the headset going, "Hey, get Zeke a touchdown on national TV so we can jump into the bell."
Have you noticed? That's a good point. The bell narrative is one that I hadn't thought of.
Right.
Is it a bell or a kettle?
Whatever it is.
I think the bell would be
kettle?
Yeah. Anyway.
Oh, right. It's an upside down bell. Yeah.
Yeah. But I also think like Jerry Jones is stubborn, but he was arguing against something he hadn't seen yet. I think Jerry Jones has probably just been a little quieter this week because he's seen it.
Maybe.
And Tony Pollard's going to be his guy now.
If I had a concern about Zeke, it would be the short week. Coming off the short week, and maybe they scale it back. We have seen that with like the Ravens, for example.
Gus, yeah.
Yeah. So CeeDee Lamb must start. No other Cowboys wide receiver, I assume.
Correct.
And Dalton Schultz must start.
Yep.
Okay. And Cowboys DST must start.